Dum da da dum dum da. Welcome to a brand new episode of Dance with the Universe, where I dance with my personal experiences and my thoughts and hope to bring you some inspiration and help you on your own personal process of healing and growth, because in the end that's what we're here for, no? To inspire each other to keep growing and to keep transforming our lives. So as maybe some of you know, I'm a huge travel fan, huge traveler. I spent many years, actually like 8 years I think, traveling the world, and so far I've been to 44 countries. That's a huge number. I can't believe it sometimes. I don't just travel, I actually also lived in many of those countries. In some countries just for a few months or weeks. But today I actually want to speak about those countries I lived in for a minimum of a year. Because that's actually the time that you need, I guess, to build your own social circle and to have your own place, to find a work and to really land in the place. I'm gonna present you 1, 2, 3, 4. I have to count. I'm gonna present you today the 5 countries I lived in so far and what I actually learned living in those countries and being with its culture and its people every day. So I hope you enjoyed a lot. So one thing before I start with the countries that I lived in so far, actually to be honest, in the moment that I was living in those countries, I actually was always longing for another place. I always was longing for some time in the future that will come. But now I realize that you can actually only appreciate something once you get a little bit of distance from it. And for me, that's the distance from the country actually made me realize all the value it actually brought to my life. Because then you have also a point of comparison, no? With more years that you're in this world and more places that you see, you can really evaluate for yourself which place helped you grow and in which way, and where you actually want to spend your life in the end. Which, by the way, I don't know yet for sure. So let's start with my home country, where I actually grew up and spent obviously the most years of my life, Germany. So I grew up in a city called Dresden in the east of Germany. And I left Dresden when I was 21 years old. So I spent my whole childhood, youth, and my first years of studying actually in this city. And to be honest, I never really considered myself to be very German. I had a kind of a neglection going on there because I lived there for all my life and I felt always I was a little bit different and I wanted to escape and to go out into the world and venture out. But then if I look back, I have to say I had a really beautiful childhood and really beautiful time there, and with a lot of amazing friends, some of which are still in my life. And obviously I have all my family there, which I'm really grateful for. And I guess that's what we not do enough, to be grateful for our home, for the place where we grew up, where we come from. Because there's a lot of people nowadays that move out of their original city where they were born, or even the country. But it's good to always come back to your roots, no? Because in the end, your roots are what sustains you in this world, and where your family is also is a place where you can always go back to and where you always have a place. And that's a really beautiful thing that I right now appreciate. And always I appreciate now being German, because I realize I have a lot of German values and a lot of German habits actually, and ways of thinking that I only realized once I've been out of Germany. Actually traveling reconnected me with my roots, with my German roots. And I know there's a lot of stereotypes people have. And I think stereotypes are actually always containing some kind of truth, no? Because they say Germans are really always punctual and have a lot of structure. And obviously it's true in a way, because our economy for that reason also, compared to Colombia, for example, is way better and way more stable. And we have a really good social net that sustains you, that catches you once you fall, that of which is not happening here in Colombia. So some stereotypes are also true. Obviously, it's never really true for 100% of the people. But I think every German person has a little bit of that, because in the end we grew up in that country with those values and that moral. We went to school, we we were in all those circles, in the social circles, and that our parents also raised us this way. I think we should be grateful for, and I'm also really thankful for, because I see this punctuality and this being really organized, structured, and efficient really inside of myself. I really appreciate that, and that's something I learned, no? Obviously in my time in Germany, but more now that I look back and that I see all those values and all those skills I have because of that here out of my home country. Some things that I consider personally that I don't so much like about the German culture is that in comparison with other cultures, we're a little bit more cold, no? I mean, this cold thinking also helps us a lot to have a really good economy and to be really well as a country compared to others. It also makes us to be a little bit more distant from a lot of things, from a lot of more human values and things that I saw happening when I was starting to travel, you know. Some values that are connected with family, with friendship, with a home actually, because I feel we are really individualistic in the Western world in general. We really think about the individual more and, okay, me, and maybe then my partner, and maybe then my child. And if I'm okay with my family, maybe my parents and my grandparents, but that's it. But it's a really small circle compared, if I compare it right now to the Colombian lifestyle or the Latin lifestyle, or even in Asia that happened to me, that the family has a whole nother value. And here the Latin culture is way more hot, you know, in a way that they're way more open and way more embracing of other people and of other ways of thinking. And yeah, I don't know, they just feel a little bit more warm. That even happened to me when I go out. No, when you go out in Germany, it's always a little bit distant and see if I like someone, but don't come too close and But here it's like 1 minute and you talk with 1 million of people and you have 1 million of friends, and it's maybe that's also because I'm a blonde foreigner, but who knows? It's just a whole nother culture when I just see like family gatherings here. I went to a lot of family gatherings and they get up and they dance all together and they're all grandparents with the young children, and it's a real fiesta. It's really beautiful. And that never really happened that way in Germany, at least in my family. It's a little bit more reserved, let's say like that. Although I know that the new generation, that my generation is really, really open-minded, especially in Germany, I feel that. And I really love that about that generation in my country too, that actually I think we're the country that almost that travels the most, because everywhere I go and everywhere I travel, I find Germans. And that's something I really appreciate too, because that means we're really open to this world and to venture out. So I really love the open-mindedness and the Wanderlust, how we call it. Wanderlust is like you really want to go out and travel and to see the world and to wander, no? And I really appreciate also the conscience about the environment that is now developing. I see that a lot on social media, no? That a lot of people are really conscious about what's happening around of them. Like all the thing with the conscious eating and nutrition, that doing a lot of exercises, that being really without waste, no waste kind of culture. Also being really body conscious and body positive and really open to all kinds of ways of thinking, and that I think is really beautiful. Also, I think, as I mentioned before, our social system is really amazing compared to others, and it's really fair. You never really have to be hungry in Germany, the same way that you see a lot of people here just being really lost and really not having anything, It's a whole nother story I can talk maybe about another time. And the equality, that's been practiced in Germany, and that I really appreciate that, and that's what I also learned and what I also take from my country. And I'm really proud to be part of that culture and to have learned and have been raised in that culture, and to be always able to go back. Now that has probably been the longest I talk about one place I lived in, because obviously it was the place where I lived 21 years. When I was 21, I left Germany because I was studying at that moment project management. And actually during that study, I also left the country for a few months. I think it was 3 months. That was like the first longer time I left. And I went to Ireland. So it was a really wild time and my first experience taking care of children, working in a language school, and living in a foreign family. It was really beautiful. I really loved the rich tradition in Ireland, but I really didn't like the weather. So that was a little first travel I did, living kind of in another country, but only for 3 months. When I really moved out of Germany, I was 22. So I moved to Leeds, which is in the north of England, to continue my studies and to finish my bachelor in international business and English as a foreign language. And I actually stayed 1 year longer to also do a master's in marketing and advertising. Because I really loved studying there. Leeds is a super cool city if you're a student, because it's kind of 90% full of students and has a lot of universities and a lot of amazing things to do. And I have really had a great time there. But the first thing I realized in England was that I don't really speak English, like a day-to-day English. That was the weirdest thing that happened to me, because obviously you learn English in school and in university, you learn business English and you read English books and you watch English TV series, but you don't really realize until you live in the country. That's what I always think about learning another language. You have to live in that country to really speak the language. Because when I went to England the first time and I started to live like in a shared apartment with another German girl and a guy from England, and I realized I don't really know, for example, how to say plate or fork, or like really stupid, easy words actually, but you never use them in your business English class. So that was the first thing I learned there, that wow, I really have to learn more how to speak day-to-day English, and also to learn obviously all the different dialects and accents they speak was a real challenge at the beginning. But then I the first time I couldn't really go to the supermarket and I didn't understand the lady, because the funny thing is in Yorkshire, in the north of England, they always say love to you. Like everyone says love. It's not a really intimate thing to say. It's just really normal, polite. And the lady in the supermarket said, "Thanks, love. Have a good day, love." And I was really, the first time she said that, I was like, "Oh, that's really intimate, no? Lady, I don't even know you. What happened?" And yeah, a lot of things like that happened to me, because England has a lot of dialects. Damn. So going to university in England was really amazing, because it was so international. Like I thought Germany's international, but no, England is just the most international country I've ever been to. Because imagine, I lived with a Georgian girl. I was really into dance at that moment. I mean, I'm still, but I was in different dance crews and competitions. And I danced with people from all over the world: Filipinos, Greeks, Spanish, African. Also in my studies, there were a lot of different Asian people, for example, from Thailand, from China, from India. And at that time I also had a boyfriend who was half Jamaican. And yeah, I was just spending time with people from all over the world all the time. And that opened my mind and yeah, my view of the world a lot, because we also always met and had some cooking nights where we just cooked like amazing Asian food. At that time I really discovered my passion new for dancing, because I was dancing in Germany a lot too. But in England, I realized that a lot of people actually took that passion and made it into their job. So I was spending a lot of time with artists and dancers and actors, singers. And it was so amazing for me to see that they just had that passion and they said, no, I'm going to study that. I'm actually going to make this serious and I'm going to live my dream. And that was something that back then in Germany was not easy to do. I mean, to study dance in Germany was like, oh, first of all, your family would never agree to that, because why? What's that? What kind of job is that? And there was also not a lot of universities you could go to. But in England, it was so easy to study dance, for example, or acting. I really learned that you should follow your passion no matter what your parents or your culture taught you. And another thing I also learned was being a student in a city is very different to actually working in a city. I actually never wanted to live in Leeds because I could not imagine how it would be to actually be a working person from 9 to 5 every day and seeing all those crazy students doing the most crazy things all night long. in the streets. And yeah, no, I would not want to do that, because it's just another time of your life. You have a different rhythm and different priorities. I mean, back in my student time, I got up every day at 11 and went to bed not before 3 a.m. So I had a really different kind of rhythm to now working. So it's just a different time of life where you discover a lot of things. And most importantly for me, studying was actually not because of the intellectual things I learned, but more of the social things I learned from the people I was with, because I think university is such an important time to develop yourself socially and to see how you relate with other people in different situations. Where are your limits? You do a lot of crazy things in university. I mean, I did. And you kind of discover your limits, and you kind of explore, and you find out who you want to be in this world, no? And with whom you want to be, and how you relate with different people in different situations. And that's what really university is about, for me, at least. And I also spent a lot of time during my time in England and London. I really loved London. I mean, I still do, but I wouldn't want to live there now. And I really wanted at that time to live in London one day. And then I realized you really need a lot of money to live in London. It's a really different kind of city where you can have a super amazing life, but if you have good cash. So that never happened. And in the end, I also realized that I'm not anymore a big city person, but that I turned now into more a nature person. But back then, obviously, you have another perspective of life, and that's the life you want, no? Living in the big city with good money and living the dream. But that changed a lot. So I'm really thankful to England, because it was like my student time, and that is a really precious time in life. So when I was studying, I actually also took a lot of trips around Europe, and I started to develop this thirst for traveling. I mean, I always wanted to travel a lot, but then it got stronger and stronger, and meeting all these people from all these parts of the world. They also actually all invited me to come visit them after we finished our studies, and I was like, why not? Because to be honest, I first, like everyone did, being in the end of my master's, I started to apply to different companies and to different graduate schemes, when I realized that, whoa, I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to start working straight away right now. There's still something I need to do. And I followed this intuition really, and that I need to go out there alone, all by myself, and travel the world. And I always had that feeling that I need to find something. And I just followed that. I followed also the call of all my Asian friends and started to go on my first big trip, which started in China, actually. And I went to Thailand, to Bali, and in the end I went to Australia, where I then also ended up living, actually. So that's my third country I lived in for a while, is Australia. I actually did a work and travel, which a lot of people do actually straight after they finish their school with 18 years. So I found a lot of people that were really young there, and I was already 24, I think, and had a little bit of a different mindset, but I still had a lot of fun there, to be honest. I traveled all the Gold Coast, and I had my sister actually at that time also doing work and travel in Sydney, and I stayed a little bit with her. She was working in Sydney, and we traveled a little bit together, which was really beautiful too, and a really crazy time as well. I lived then a few months actually in Brisbane, and in the end I went back to Melbourne, which is in the south of Australia, to actually stay a while there and to work, to build kind of a life a little bit, no? I found a really amazing shared apartment. Actually, I lived in a house with another 3 girls, which were really cool, because one of them was actually an actor, another one was studying psychology. But it was a lot of fun, because I really lived the Australian lifestyle then, no? Once you live in that country, once you find your own place and you start to work, it's a whole nother experience of that country than when you travel and you sleep in hostels and you're always with travelers, kind of. I mean, I also did a lot of couch surfing at that time. And couch surfing is a really amazing tool, I find, to meet locals. And for that reason, I stayed with a lot of locals, also traveling Australia. I had a lot of amazing and also creepy experiences, but I think I'm going to make another episode just about these really funny experiences I had. And the most amazing one was actually with my sister when we couch surfed in Sydney, and we stayed with this really rich guy who had this apartment where you can overlook the Sydney Opera. And we had our own room with our beds, and he had a jacuzzi, and he took us out for dinner, and it was amazing. And all for nothing. Like, he was not a creepy guy or anything. He was really cool. He just wanted company. And yeah, that was one really cool couch surfing experience. But as I said, I'm going to make another episode, I think, about that. So I lived in Melbourne, and I actually worked with an agency there. And I did all kinds of jobs, which was actually also cool. I worked in a mall. I did catering, I worked at festivals and sports events. I even worked as a porter in a hotel. Like this, I really felt integrated into the society and into the Australian culture, because I met so many locals, and I actually spent all my time with locals. I had local friends, went on dates with locals. And Australia actually is not so different from Europe, I feel. It had a lot in common with the English culture, to be honest, but then also had some differences. And the most thing that I found a little bit difficult was that it was so far away actually from Europe, and the time difference was like 12 hours. So when I was sleeping, my family or my friends were awake, and when I was awake they were sleeping. That was really crazy. But I realized there that you can actually build a life wherever you want, once you set your mind to it and you find a place you really like and you feel comfortable in, which I felt in Melbourne. I really easily built like a circle of friends. I had a work. I had a really good life there, actually. And you can establish real independence. No, I felt really independent back then, and really empowered to know that I can do that wherever I choose to. That was what Australia really showed me, how to be independent and how to build a home wherever I really choose to. So coming home after my first big travel, which in the end lasted like almost 2 years, was really crazy to come back home and to be a little bit like, what do I do now with my life? And I let myself actually be pulled into that, thinking that I need to now get a job and really get serious because I'm 26 years old and I need to start to live the life everyone does. So I actually applied to many jobs, and I eventually found a job in Austria, in Vienna. And that is the fourth country I actually lived in for a while. Not so long, actually, for 1 year I lived in Austria. And to be honest, at first I had these stereotypes of Austria, that it's really German, it's like Germany. And it seemed very German for me at first, but then it wasn't at all. The first thing it taught me was to don't judge a place before you really know it. Because if you just travel to one place, you cannot really know the place and the people and the culture. You have to really spend a good time there. And that's what I did. So I started a job there as a marketing assistant in a startup. And I got to really like the city with its splendor, impressive history, and crazy buildings, really rich tradition, cute cafes, art galleries. So it felt really international too, because there were a lot of immigrants from Eastern countries, and the influence was actually huge. It was really close to Italy and Hungary, so I spent a lot of time traveling to those countries too, which I really loved. And I always saw Vienna a little bit as a noble version of Berlin. So I had a lot of common with Berlin, but it was a little bit more gourmet, also speaking of the people. But I really loved also that you could do so many things in Vienna, especially in summer. So many outdoor activities, amazing mountains and forests you can walk to. Like, Austrian people really love outdoor activities and sports. And they have a lot of green spaces all over the city that I really, really appreciate that a lot. And obviously in winter also they went crazy with winter sports and going skiing and going hiking. And that's something I really got to love in Austria. And in the end, if I look at it from my perspective now, that it's really true that every place has beauty. And if you really take time, you can discover amazing things to do in every country, city, or place you will choose to live in, no? In every place you can meet amazing people and make really good friends. Like, I had a really super cool circle of friends. They're also very international, because the company I worked in also was super international. Looking back now, I really also appreciate the good life I had there, the really good quality life. It's not for no reason that they called Vienna the most livable city back then of the world. So it was really true, because it's just amazing all the things you got there, and how secure and safe you felt, and socially stable, really good food opportunities, really good opportunities to travel, a lot of days free, and it's a really good place to live. I can really recommend. But the biggest takeaway from my time living in Vienna was for sure that a 9 to 5 job life just wasn't for me. Because in the end, I was not happy doing what I did, which didn't have anything to do with the place, of course, but with myself. And if you want to find out more about this big takeout, I recorded another episode. It's called Why Getting Fired is the Best Thing That Can Happen to You. So I did get fired back in Vienna. Right now, I really appreciate that, because I wouldn't be where I am now. After getting fired in Vienna, I actually ventured on another adventure. For almost 1.5 years, I think, I went to travel all Latin America. And that's when I also decided to move to Colombia. I mean, that's a whole other story, I think, how I decided to move here, which was also a really spontaneous decision, to be honest. But in the end, it was a decision I took out of intuition, and because I wanted to really learn from this country and its rich tradition and tribes and medicine. And I also had a really beautiful person inviting me, which is now my partner. So I had a lot of reasons to actually come here and give this country a chance, which I did. So now I've been living here almost 2 years in beautiful Colombia. And what I'm doing here right now is actually helping with a really amazing project, which my partner Luis did build for almost 12 years now. He's been working with a non-profit organization, and he's trying to recover this ancient knowledge that is buried in the tribes and in the ancient traditions of Colombia. And he works with medicine too, with plant medicine, and is an indigenous healer basically. And here we have a little cultural house. We have a little restaurant and cafe. We work a lot with cacao, and yeah, basically I'm learning a lot about myself here. I always say it's like another university, but it's a university of self-discovery where I actually learn mostly about myself, and where I've been growing a lot since I've moved here. And what Colombia really taught me in this time is how to reconnect with myself, how to reconnect also with my roots, because here is when I really found a deep connection to my home country. Then I also learned how to relax here, really, and how to appreciate my German values, but also how to loosen up a little bit and to relax from all those concepts and ideas. I also learned how to be really humble and appreciate a lot of things that I didn't even know that I had, which another country and another perspective and other people make you really see what you have. And I really learned to enjoy, because, as I said before, the Latin culture is really, really fiery and really passionate and really open, being close to other people, which I really love. But if you want to know a little bit more in detail about what I learned from Colombia, I recorded another episode about that, what Colombia taught me, if you want to check that out. So if I look back now at those 5 countries I lived in my 30 years of life, I have to say that every place in this world has something to teach you, because every culture has some spark to give you, has some knowledge that you can gain wisdom from, some tradition that you can connect with, and has some amazing people you can later call your friends. Also, all the challenges you will face in each different country, depending obviously on your situation, but also on yourself. Will always teach you a lot of things and will keep teaching you stuff. I learned really it doesn't matter where you live or where you choose to call your home. It's how you feel inside of you, how you really find that home inside of you. And I can say that because I lived in many places and been to many places, and in the end what I was searching for was the home inside of me. Also, I really like to not call myself now a German Colombian or German. I like to call myself more world citizen, because I like that concept that we don't belong to a country or culture, we belong to this earth. And that makes us all be more connected in the end and be more open-minded, more appreciative, more grateful. So I hope you enjoyed my little histories, my little explorations into these 5 countries. Let's see which countries are still to follow in my history. Who knows? I mean, I'm open to everything. I hope you can take something from this episode and appreciate also the place you call your home right now. And if you want to connect with me, I'm really happy that you just contact me on my blog, bluesandia.net, or if you want to follow me on Instagram, where I share a little bit of more my personal life and my artistic way of expressing. And on Instagram at bluesandia soul dancer. I'm really happy to connect with you, and I wish you wherever you are in this world a wonderful day, night, a wonderful life. Mucho amor.